startup called Video Labs, and I'm still the CEO of this company. As you will see through the presentation, Video Labs is a lab around ideas around video. But let's talk about Videoland nonprofit and how it's going to conquer the world. The story starts quite a long time ago, in the 1960s. In the 1960s, so this École Centrale Paris was in the center of Paris, in a very expensive place, and they had only 100 students per year. So they decided, well, it's not enough. So how do we make it bigger? And a contrario from here, universities are free or almost free in France, and so they don't have much money. So because the name was Centrale, they decided to put it in the fucking middle of France, in the middle of nowhere. I heard you were joking about here being middle of cornfields. This is not the middle of nowhere. The middle of France is like nothing, like absolutely nothing. Don't worry, I'm still speaking about VLC. I know you're going to wonder. And so the alumni says, okay, no way that we go. So they go there and they buy this piece of land, south of Paris, very nice and boring piece of land, 25 kilometers, and they buy the land and they build the campus. And that's quite important because they are the one who built the campus. And so the campus is a private entity, and the school, the big horrible stuff that no one went to, is the stuff at the top. Why is that important? Because in the 1980s, they decided to wire all the rooms of the campus with an awesome technology of token ring. So, except both of you, who knows token ring? Oh, okay, the third guy. So token ring is a very, very old technology done, I guess, by IBM, where instead of having like everyone with Ethernet or Wi-Fi connected to the router, you have only one ring, right? So when someone joins it, you just make the ring bigger. So every packet of your networking goes through every computer. Well, in the 1980s, you don't care because you're writing 2 emails on Pine, but 1993, you want to play Doom, right? Or, well, which was basically the old Call of Duty, right? So the problem with Doom on a token ring network is simple. The more guys you have, the higher is your latency. And what happens in FPS when you have high latency? Yeah, you die. And so you don't want to die. And so how do you not die? You get a bigger network, right? And so the students go and say, yeah, you know, internet is going to be very important. And they go to the school, and the school says, we would love so much to help you to buy you 2 million euros a network, but we cannot because the campus is not ours. And this is how the Videoland community starts. The student says, okay, so we're going to go and see the people who actually built the campus. And one was a building company of France called Bouygues, which is building horrible buildings. But they also have a TV network called TF1. And so we are in 1994. And they go and the guy says, well, you know, we are experimenting with satellite television. So of course, for most of you, it's logical. 1994, it was like awesome, new. You bought like $2,000 decoders boxes that were able to show you satellite television. And say, well, if you take the feed, which is digital, from the satellite on only one big satellite dish, and stream it on the network instead of having 2,000 dish for the 2,000 students of the campus, then you're going to destroy your network, but we will pay you for a new network. Of course, for you, like, that was 12 years before YouTube, so maybe it sounds logical. At that time, it was insane. Doing MPEG-2 decoding in software on a normal machine, which was your 4086 DX 33 megahertz, something that basically couldn't make a phone call those days. But the students didn't realize how big it was. And so they said, okay, sure. And you pay our new network? Sure. So they started doing video streaming on a LAN, and that's the video LAN project, because students wanted to play Doom. So the campus network was done by a non-profit organization called Via Central Réseau, run by students, and so they wanted this new network. So it took them basically 2 years, from 1995 to 1996, to actually get the solution to work. Around 1 year to get the money and the funding, and 1 year to deploy the network and code. It was an awesome success. You were able to watch 35 seconds of video, and then everything crashed because they were leaking megabytes of memory. And they had, like, for the demo, one machine with 256 megabytes of RAM, which was huge at the time. And that went great. So they said, in 1998, they rebooted the project saying, well, maybe other people care about the solution, which is a client and a server. But they have the idea, because like they're awesome, to go and open source. At that time, well, the Linux kernel was 7 years old. They were starting to do open source, but it was quite new at the point. And they wanted cross-platform. So I'm going to stop you here. Cross-platform at the time meant Linux and BOS, not Windows and Mac OS. And they wanted to have it network-oriented, and it was run by students for the students. They spent 3 years fighting with the university to change the license from proprietary to GPL, because the university wanted to sell the project for whatever reason. I think the reason was that MIT sold the MPEG-1 decoder. Does it ring a bell? Maybe? Yes. And so they moved to the GPL v2 or later. I think that the headmaster of the university had no clue what GPL was and signed it because, well, he was forced. VideoLAN is just more than VLC. Of course, the most known part is VLC, but we have lots of libraries, lots of other software related to video streaming. Some of the most famous ones are libDVD CSS, which is cracking DVD, well, playing DVDs. But also X264, which is the most used video encoder in the world. Every video you see online is encoded by X264. Basically everything on Facebook, everything on YouTube or Dailymotion or whatever you're using. Netflix is using X264 also. So in 2003, this was the architecture of the VideoLAN solution, where you had like different inputs, lots of VLCs and VLS, and then stream on the network and have clients play it. As you guessed, there was VideoLAN client and VideoLAN server. So VideoLAN client became VLC, and the server became VLS. As I said, awesome namings. The thing is, what they did in 2003 is still the same as we are doing those days. Nothing has changed. And the ideas they had about being open source, cross-platform, and network-oriented helped the project to become quite big. So I'm going to speak a bit about not VLC, but multimedia in general. Multimedia is a very weird specialty of computer software. Why? Because of that. It's a mess, and I'm very polite. Because in multimedia, there is 2 major rules. The first rule is that if there is a stupid way to do something, someone will do it, and badly, and then it will complain until it is a standard and it is supported. Multimedia is horrible. There is, in VLC, around 500 codecs, various codecs, approximately 250 different formats. I'm not talking about subtitles, metadata, and so on. And everything is pushed on top of the other one. And it makes it even worse is that the second rule is in multimedia, everything thinks he understands everything, but actually no one does. It's very humbling that after doing, I don't know, 15 years on multimedia, I still don't know everything, right? And when I do talks at YouTube, I still tell the YouTube guys some stuff about multimedia they don't know. It is very difficult. While technically nothing is very complex. It's just there is so many norms, so many stuff to know that it makes it very difficult. But that means that it's great for open source. Why? Because there is always one guy who cares about this very weird format with this very weird codec, with this very weird combination, and will submit a patch to you. And that's how VLC became popular, because now people believe that VLC can play anything, even VHS, like tapes, or other stuff like that. So yeah, everything is broken in multimedia. If you care, we can talk about that longer. And it's even worse, because some people, like the open source community, decided to create new formats which are even more broken than the other formats. So let's speak about the code. It's very funny, because often I come and say, well, you know, I do video LAN, or, you know, I talk about VLC, and people say, no. Yeah, you know, the cone that plays videos. Oh, yeah, I use that on my computer. Someone installed it. Oh, yes, I've been playing all my totally legit content with it forever. And the thing is, it's completely insane and stupid to use a cone as a software, right? What the fuck does this... Why? Like, just like, does it bring anything about video? No, it just shows this is unfinished business. The thing is, at the same time, it's absolutely a genius marketing stuff, done, of course, not on purpose, because everyone remembers this cone, because it's so much, like, more distinctive than, oh, let's take an Earth to represent the web. One of the things that made VLC very popular was that VLC plays every format. And I mean every format. But one of the reasons, like, some of you don't know some of the old formats, like Xvid or DivX. That was when we downloaded stuff on the internet. Now it's on the MKV X264. But as it was open source, many people were able to add stuff on it. The fact that it was done in France also means, because in France we have sane politicians, we don't have software patents. And you don't have that. So we can implement any software codec, because, well, it's just basically a matrix, a transform that you can do. It's just math. So having software patents on codecs is insane, because basically you're allowing to patent mathematics. In France, we don't have that. So in France, you can do and add a lot of codecs. And that's what we did with VLC. Lots of people started to add more codecs, but we could ship them with VLC. And it was very good, because in 2001, 2003, when you wanted to play a video file, you know, Windows Media Player said, no, I can't play this file. Please install a codec pack. So you went somewhere, download some codec pack with absolutely no malware in it, and it didn't play. So you went to go and take another codec pack, right? And the second codec pack was fighting with the first one, so nothing was playing anymore. In VLC, from the beginning, we play everything. We ship all our codecs from within. So that was the first reason why it became popular. The second reason is everyone here above 18? Yes? What is the legal age here?
For what?
Adult stuff? 18? Okay. So, a long time ago, when you started to download stuff on the internet, you were on a 56K modem. So downloading a movie took you 24 hours, right? So I know it's insane for you, but for us, it meant that, right? And the problem is that you started to download your DivX, and after one day, you realize that the Disney movie you were downloading was actually an adult movie, or the adult movie what you were downloading was a Disney movie. So you're completely disappointed, right? Of course, today you go on, I don't know, streaming.com website and you download everything and like 5 minutes just starts right away. But it wasn't like that. Why did VLC do something different? Well, VLC is done and was done as a network player. And in a network, you don't expect the data to come as a whole, right? So when Windows Media Player plays a file, it just goes and says, oh, I need the metadata that is at the end of the file. So you go at the end of the file, but you haven't downloaded the end of the file. So it just says, ah, no, I can't play it, and stops. VLC says, well, I need the data at the end of the file, but it's not present. So I'm just going to try to see what I can do. Of course, so you could play your DivX. You couldn't seek the timing was not perfect, but at least in like 1 hour, you could check that it was the correct James Bond movies that you were downloading. And you, of course, you had the right to do that. And the third reason why VLC became popular is because VLC runs everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, the last version still run on OS 2. The 3 users of OS 2 in Korea are very happy about that. One of them is actually maintaining the port. But yeah, Windows, Linux, for a long time, it's insane, but for a long time, the only way to play a DVD on a Mac was to use VLC. Because until macOS 10.3, there was no iDVD player. So the only way was to use VLC. We support, of course, Solaris, BSDs, Linuxes, Windows. We are running on the Xbox One, we're running on the iOS, and Android, and other weird stuff. Let's speak about numbers. That's an old slide. Downloads per day, 1 million. That's quite a bit. 2/3 of that is updates, of course. Number of users probably today is around 400 million. That's quite a large project for a bunch of volunteers who are doing that on their free time. And since we started counting, we are around 2.5 billion downloads. Yeah, so VLC plays everything from DVDs to Blu-rays. We place also networking streams. We have input for cameras, TVs, SDI, ISI, and a lot of stuff. You can watch your TV tuner or your satellite with VLC, for example. So let me show you a few nice slides of VLC. Okay, so if you look closely, this is actually a GNOME 1. Something, probably one of the first versions of VLC able to play DVDs. And as you can see, it's still called VideoLAN client at the top. And as you can realize, this is, what is the movie? What is the movie? No? No one? Yes, it's a James Bond. Which one? In 2003, Skyfall? Really? like what?
I'm like 12, so.
Yes, Tomorrow Never Dies, that's correct. This is the first version of VLC playing TV with Roland Garros streaming on GNOME 2 and like an awesome UI done in GTK. The first version on the Mac with this glossy, horrible look that you had on the early Mac OS 10. This is the version that most people started to learn to know VLC with, 0.8 written in WX widgets, a very horrible UI library that you should not use ever, except if you like pain. But was very stable. This is a bit more modern version on macOS, and then we moved to Qt, mostly because it worked way better on Windows. And like the last version, which is the best version because it plays ponies, running on GNOME 3. So let's speak a bit more about open source. Open source is extremely important because it's about freedom. It's not just about computer stuff. It's way more important than that. You're going to tell me what is freedom. you're supposed to answer me on that question because you're from the land of the free, right? But it's very important because freedom is I can do what I want and I'm free to do it, no ties attached. But those days it's getting more and more difficult to actually be free with your computers. A lot of stuff that you do are done on your computers. Everything you're doing today is on your computer, right? In my old days, you were listening to music, you had like a hi-fi system, you were watching TV, you had a TV system, you were playing games, you were doing actual games and actually go out. Now everything you do is online. Every social interaction is online. But also everything you do on your work life, everything you do with your banking, with your relation to the government, everything is done on computers. And those computers, you don't know what is happening there. And sometimes it's just not computers, but algorithm, you know? Like, we spoke a lot with big data. There was a lot of discussion about the algorithm of Facebook to discuss, to show or not show some news during your last election. And do you trust your government? Do you trust your big corps? So depending on if you're leaning liberal or conservative, you trust one and not the other one. But, well, you're in America, right? It doesn't matter. Of course you do trust your big corps and your government. Yes? But what about if they are from China? Well, I mean, like, what do you know what's happening in 5 years, right? How much of the networking those days is done with, not with Cisco anymore, but with Huawei switches? How many of the cheap Android phones are high silicon? Yes? You see the point? It is extremely important for your democracy and for your social aspect of your life to control what is happening. And open source is the only way to go for that. So it's really important that you invest time on open source and free software, and not just for your work life, but also for your whole life. There is some discussion in the communities about open source vs free software. To be honest, I don't really care, so I use both. But if I was a good free software activist, I wouldn't. Open source is just like, well, the source is open and you can redo it. The ideas behind free software goes a bit beyond that and goes around actual communities of people who work together. Basically, it's two different ways of seeing the same ideas, of sharing code. What you see in free software communities like Videolan is actually volunteers. So VLC and the other Videolan project were started by students who were no older than you are. If you look on the photos, you see that they are quite young too. And for a long time, it was only done by students. And after that, it was done by all students who were doing that on their free time. And that shows that, and it's not like big open source stuff like .NET, or because now open source is great, everyone does it, Microsoft does it, Apple does it, which is like, what the fuck? You can build open source software and free software that is actually useful, without having a lot of money. And I think that Videolan showed that. So Videolan, I created the Videolan nonprofit organization in 2008. I took most of the assets from the university who did not want to be associated with VLC anymore. Most of the members are actually core VLC developers, and the nonprofit doesn't have money. It just has enough money to buy the last GPU in order to not play Call of Duty or Battlefield, but to work around the latest bug of AMD and NVIDIA on Windows. And also it can pay for like travels and a bit of legal stuff. But the nonprofit does not employ anyone. So how do we work? Actually, everything we do is IRC, like old way IRC. You know, like Slack for text, guys. We use mailing list, like, you know, it's like Facebook, but with mails. But since 2007, we actually meet twice a year. One is at the FOSDEM, which is the biggest open source event in Europe, which is one of the only open source event that is completely free, I believe. I'm not sure there are many in the US. And now we meet every year in September for the Video Land Dev Days, which is basically our community meeting. We use Git since 2007, so that's quite a bit early compared to most of the other communities. So we started, there was no GitHub, and you shouldn't use GitHub. And we use only open source software for everything we do. Track, Git, PHP, MediaWiki, our RECs, and so on. We have code of conducts. We have very simple rules on how to decide. So we are not like one of those big non-profits who have committees and governments committees and committees of committees. That works for us because we are not numerous, but that wouldn't scale. Yeah, so here is just a photo of the community. This is basically 1/3 of those guys are working on VLC, and the 2 other thirds are working on other projects that are related to VLC. Because when I compile VLC, I compile the 1 million lines of code of VLC, but I compile 15 million lines of code from other projects that are all open source projects from different guys who are wrong. As you can see, we have so many women because of computer software. That is not good, and that should change, but as I've seen during the hackathon, this is not changing fast enough. So for the people who know the cathedral against the bazaar, we are really on the bazaar side. So everything we do is like someone thinks he must do something and he does it, which means that we don't have like a big roadmap, and this is why also you have so many weird features in VLC that no one uses, but you don't have some awesome features that everyone wants because just no one has done it. How do we decide? And that is very important. We take your code if it's of high code quality. Why do we do that? Well, it's simple. You guys, you're going to say, well, I want to do this new thing in VLC. So you arrive, you send me a patch. But the thing is, in 6 months, you're gone. You will tell me, oh no, Jean-Baptiste, I'm going to stay. Sure, I'm going to maintain this feature. But I know, statistically, that you're gone. Because in 6 months, you're going to change wife, cat, job, studies, or I don't know, anything. Like you could have an accident, you could have something. So I cannot take the risk of merging bad code. So the review process of VLC is completely fascist, completely insane, but the code that gets in is correct. And I know I will maintain that. There is lots of people asking us, why didn't you do that? It's very important. Every other software is doing it. Yes, but because everyone who sent us patches so far, the code was crap. You know, like, give an example. We have seen people who send us patches in C where they malloc and they don't check the return of the malloc because mallocs never fails, right? Well, you know, actually, when you got 400 million users and they use it at least once 1 hour per day, malloc is going to fail, and your software is going to crash, and stuff like that. So we have a very difficult process. We have no marketing, no legal, and the people who code are the one in power. If there is discussions, so we try to reach a consensus, and if we don't, then we fork. So far, there has been no fork, well, no maintained fork of VLC. It's important to know that the core team of VLC is 5 guys. okay? So you don't need to be that many to maintain a project. To answer a question that was asked during like 2 hours ago, we use Git in a SVN way, which means that we always rebase before merging. The reason is that we don't have often big refactoring. So most of the time it's like 2 or 3 commits, and it doesn't make sense to have like 3 commits, 1 merge, 2 commits, 1 merge, because it makes the history very difficult to read. So VLC also became popular because of technical good reason. The first thing is that VLC is done in modules. Modules mean that everything is abstracted, and the core of VLC is 80,000 lines of code. 80,000 lines of code is ridiculous. It's very simple, right? Anyone can start and enter. But also that every module is basically everything you want, every codec, every video output, every interface is a module. And modules are between 200 and 2,000 lines. Like any one of you could write it, right? And if you write a module, you don't need to understand what is happening elsewhere. You don't need to understand the core. And that's how we get a lot of contribution. People arrive, they do something that looks cool, a new video filter, a new codec. They don't understand the rest of VLC, but that's fine, they don't need that. The other reason modules are good is that in VLC, we use the best technology of the platform. For example, on Windows, the video output, so how we display the images, is using Direct3D 9 or Direct3D 11. On Linux, it's using Xvideo, and on Mac, some OpenGL. This is the right way, right? Because so you use the best technology on the platform. The other solution is to take the common technology, and that works somehow. But when you're doing multimedia, which is real time, that doesn't. If you have ever done something on OpenGL and try to make it work on more than 2 platforms, you know the pain. So in VLC, most of the modules are all cross-platform, but we have like maybe 1/3 of the modules who are per platform. And this is how you port VLC on so many platforms. You just do a new video output to output video, a new audio output to output audio, and boom, you have VLC on the new platform. The second reason was that we use what I call C++, which is an object-oriented way of doing C. Now it doesn't matter anymore, but in 1998, when they started, C++ compiler were not that good. And also it keeps the code quite simple. It is quite simple to understand and start to work on C because it's one of the simplest languages there is. And also, as I said, because it was technically network-oriented, it helped a lot to get cool features. So yeah, so you have the core, libVLC, lots of modules, and at the top, libVLC, where you put the... So the core is very light. What does it do? Well, it just is managing memory, networking, threads, modules, and clock. So the most important is threads and clock. Threads are very complex. People believe they know what threads are. Usually they don't. And synchronization is just in order to check that audio and video are at the same time. However, the core doesn't know anything about codec, doesn't know anything about video format or audio format. So yeah, so that's what I was saying. So we've got around 1 million lines of code and a lot of external libraries in VLC. When I was explaining about C objects, so we use a lot of PF functions and that we are abusing and opaque structures. That is a way to do kind of inheritance very light. It works quite fine, but it's true that the first time you are a bit scared about the macros, like VLC command members, which is horrible. So I'm sorry to explain to you that VLC is not a media player. VLC is just a very thin wrapper around libVLC, which is actually a full multimedia framework like QuickTime or like DirectShow or GStreamer. At the runtime, depending on the file, it's going to build an oriented graph, and each part is going to be handled by a module. So if you start from the left to the right, the first part is going to be a module to support the protocol. So a protocol could be HTTP, DVD, file, something that will take a URL and give you a stream of data. Okay? The second step is what we call the format. The format is going to be MKV, AVI, MP4, and it's going to take one stream of data and output a few ones. Basically, the audio track, the video track, the subtitle track. And then each of this track is going to the subtitle codec, video codec, audio codec. And then you filter them and output them. And your eyes and your ears are on the right. Quite simple, right? If you want, you can also take the outputs and just re-encode them and restream them. So a lot of people are actually using, in professional environments, VLC to do transcoding and restreaming and re-encoding of files. So the engine of VLC is LGPL, and the VLC in itself is GPL-v2. So you can use the VLC engine in other applications and even non-open source applications, but the full VLC is always GPL and will always be. So now I'm going to show you some completely useless and insane features that we have in VLC that you probably don't know about. So the first one is VNC and remote desktop. So as you can see, you have like this QuickTime and macOS running on your left, and on the right there is VLC that is actually using as a remote desktop. It actually works, and it actually has mouse support. You can do screencasting with VLC, which is completely stupid because it's way too slow to grab your memory, but it's great because you can do this awesome mise en abîme. You can, as VLC is not a one player, it's a multimedia framework, you can decode actually multiple files at the same time. And you can then display them, rearrange them, and restream them to do like mosaic displays. That was actually used quite a bit in TV shows. Or picture-in-pictures. You can do like walls. Like instead of buying those huge walls of TVs that cost a lot of money, you can wire a lot of VLC, run on Raspberry Pi, and ask each one to decode some. And also you can have that sync through network so that you're sure that everything is on different machine on the right time. We support karaoke and MIDI because we have, of course, a way to have it on the command line with your UI, but you say, yeah, but I mean, SSH, what will I do? But also, we have the libcaca way, which is actually... So, I just want to show you guys, this is ASCII, right? It's not even Unicode. It's just in colored ASCII art. We have a web interface where you can control your VLC, and it can also stream directly in it. But we have also more crazy, stupid features like the first, I stop when someone recognizes the movie. Yes, it's written at the top. Thank you for the one who can actually read. Shit, that's difficult. And of course, you can configure it when you're a bit of a dummy like me, and it's of course easier. And of course, when you're at the right place, it auto snaps right correctly in the right, so you can see your Yoda correctly. Where is my gun? Hello. Yes. Yes. That goes here. And of course, when you finish, of course, it automatically reshuffles. So I'm not going to finish it. Oh, no, wait. Oh, yeah, you have the button at the top here with to reshuffle. So the question is why? The answer is I have no idea. So where was I? I guess the answer is because we can, but also it's because it doesn't make the rest of VLC slower or more difficult to maintain. And that is very important. The puzzle filter was coded in 2003, has not been touched since. Okay, so that's the idea. Okay, just a few stuff. We have a version running on Android. We are fully open source on Android, which is quite rare those days. It's a full player that plays every format, every codec, every file. It was started in 2010, 2011. It was quite ugly at the beginning. It's still quite ugly, but it's getting better. You know, like we managed at some point to arrive what was called the Holo theme of Android. And of course, when we finish, they say, well, now do material. So this year we have finished the material way, so they're going to announce a new style. We have a version running on Android TV, on Chrome OS, of course on iOS since a long time. That was the old UI, for iPads also. And of course, a remote control on the Apple Watch, and also an experimental way where you can watch your movie on the Apple Watch. Because of reasons. Apple TV, this was a version for WinRT, for UWP, and that is the version that is actually running on the Xbox One. We have a version running on Tizen, which is an almost dead, but not dead operating system. So, you should contribute to VLC. So how do you contribute to VLC? The first way of contributing to VLC is to actually use it. Seems very stupid, but it's not. Use it, promote it, tell it to your friends, install on your grandma laptop when she wants to play DVDs. Report bugs. Please report bugs. Like, so many times I have people say, well, I have these bugs in VLC. I said, did you report it? I said, no, of course. I thought you knew about it. Man, we play 1 million combination of formats. I don't know all the bugs. Please report bugs. Translation, join us, code on VLC, or just integrate the VLC engine, libVLC, in your next project. Just a last message for you guys, believe in yourself, because a team of students can create software like VLC. It was possible 10 years, 15 years ago. There is no reason why it would be different today, especially with all the new open source libraries there is. So please believe in yourself, even if your teachers and professors don't. And thank you, and I will get a few questions. Yes. Do we have another mic? Okay, just yell. I will try to repeat your question.
Cool. I can speak loud enough that everyone will hear my question. You talked about that the VLC is under the GPL.
Yes.
My vague understanding, and I would love to get clarification from the source, is that it was relicensed recently under a combination of MPL and GPL, specifically to allow it to be distributed in the Apple App Store. What actually happened? The reporting on this is horrible.
So in 2010 and 2011, we started relicensing the engine of VLC from GPL to LGPL v2. The reason was basically to have more professional people actually use VLC, and they wanted to use it, but they were using some tricks to work around the GPL, basically using some interfaces and so on to do that. So at some point it became too much ridiculous, so we started to move to LGPL. The problem is that the GPL is not compatible with the Apple App Store licensing conditions. So when the UI for iOS was done, it was written in a dual license that is MPL2 and GPL v2, because the MPL2 version is compatible with the App Store. So when that's just the UI layer on iOS. And it was also kept on the GPL v2 license in case someone wanted to upload it on Cydia. Yes?
How did you implement formats for those that you didn't have any documentation? Did you reverse engineer them?
For what, codecs?
Yeah, codecs.
Yes. Most of the time, yes. So there is a lot of stuff that were basically, so the question was about reverse engineering codecs. Yes, reverse engineering codecs, reverse engineering DRMs. Some of the codecs have documentation that are not free, most of the MPEG, so you just take them, or you take early drafts and then you figure out. But most of the codecs were reverse engineering by the open source community, and mostly in a project called FFmpeg. There is a question over there.
So at the beginning, you mentioned that in the mid-90s, there were two multi-platform. There were two distros, Linux, and what was the other one?
No. At the École Centrale Paris, when they thought about doing multi-platform. They only cared about Linux and BOS. Because for whatever reason, they cared, there was a large BOS community at some point in France. Because it was done by a guy called Jean-Louis Gasset from old Apple. And they really cared about that. So when they meant cross-platform, they only cared about Linux and BOS. The fact is, after VLC was licensed in GPL in February 2001, and then two guys showed up. And one guy was Gildas Bazin, an insane guy, who in 3 weeks ported everything to Windows. In 3 weeks. And then 2 months later, some other guy, awesome guy called Derkian Gildas was from the UK and Derkian was from Netherlands, University of Utrecht, ported it to macOS. And that was completely done outside of the École Centrale Paris students. So because they cared about doing cross-platform, it became really cross-platform on the systems that actually matters, which were not BOS. Other questions? I can also answer personal questions if you want. Yes?
So my question is kind of, so from my understanding, when it first started off, it was, and continued, a group of volunteers, and just personally, how did you guys find time? Is this something you put, ahead of your job?
Okay, so at the École Centrale Paris in your 4th year, so basically the French system is basically 5 years to get your master, right? So in the 4th year, they had 1 day per week to work on a project. It was called their 2nd year project, because it was 2nd year but it was basically your 4th year here. And so they had maybe 25 weeks where they had 1 day to work on the project. That's how from 1996 to 2005, the student worked on that and had time to work on that. But that is clearly not enough, so they spent their whole time doing that. And the university was very nice, because it's also true that it was a very easy university in terms of amount of work. That might be very weird, especially since it's one of the top universities in France. The system for elite university in France is you spend 2 years and you work like a madman, and then you do a very difficult exam that is national, and then you can enter different universities that are of different levels. And when you enter them, you're just yeah. So that's why you had lots of time to do other stuff than actually doing studies. So that's how they got a lot of time. And that's also why in 2005 and 6, when I was there, they started to change the system, and that's also why the student had less time to work on it, and that's why I started to take it out of the university. Yes, another question? It's good competition, but seriously, the thing is, it's funny, the MPV and player people believe we are their competition, but for us, they are not even visible. I mean, it's not, I mean, seriously, we have, like, last year, we had, on a single version of VLC, we had on our website, which means outside of download.com, CNET, and all the other ones, 200 million downloads of a single version, right? Sure, it's great what they're doing, and sure, but everything you can do with MPlayer and MPV, you can do it with VLC. Unfortunately, we are not discussing about the same size of stuff. No other questions? Yes.
Can you talk about attempt to commercialize it as a project, or how it's used commercially that development has?
It hasn't. There were a lot of stuff that were completely stupid. The question was about commercial way of making it commercial and basically making it like an actual startup or something. The funny thing is that when I arrived in 2003 in Central, they had YouTube. They had YouTube based on VLC. It never went outside. They never thought that they could make it outside. We received a lot of offers of a lot of money to basically take the VLC code base and change the license. But there was so much resistance in the community that basically no one wanted to do that. However, there are now 4 companies that spawned out of VLC. One is called Anivia, and is doing basically VLC. They took the VLS part of the servers, and they basically sell big VOD servers for hospitality mostly. There is 2 consulting company, and then the company I started 4 years ago. The sad story is, or the good story is, there is no good open source business model for B2C. Every business model you're going to see around open source is B2B, with only one exception called Mozilla. Mozilla managed to basically sell a big advertisement for Google on the top right of the browser. The thing is, you actually wanted it, because most of your time you actually wanted to go to Google. So they put the search engine, but basically it's just advertising, and they got $300 million per year for that. But beside this one unique opportunity, there is no good open source business model for B2C, or none that actually scale. We have a lot of ideas of what we could do, but everything has been mostly on the streaming side and so on. But that's fine. The question is, what is B2C? Who doesn't know what B2C is? Ow. Okay. So B2B means business to business, and B2C is business to consumer. B2B is when a company sells for a company, and B2C is when they're basically selling to you. So basically everything you can buy, you guys, is basically B2C. Seriously, guys, you need to, like, if you're doing software, you need to understand a bit of business, guys. Other questions? Please, don't be shy. Yes, Ren Man.
Have you had any particularly interestingly legal challenges?
Yes, many. I received an angry letter per week. The video non-profit is hosted at my parents' place. My mom is very unhappy about the number of letters. The thing is, I have a very good IP understanding, and I'm quite good in IP law. And a lot of lawyers just speak bullshit and they just scare you. The thing is, scaring actually works in the US. Because in the US, the risk is so big that it actually works. In other countries, like in France, well, it doesn't. Usually, the thing is, my first answer, so it depends on what they ask. Right? A lot of them are basically patent infringements, like, oh, you are not allowed to use this codec because it's a proprietary codec. So my answer is, bonjour, je suis désolé, je ne parle pas anglais, pouvez-vous m'expliquer en français? The second answer, which is actually a good answer, is, oh no, it's not true. My servers are based in France. Please show me how it is illegal with the French law. There is no reason why Google explained to me that they can use the privacy law of California because their servers are based in California. And I can't say I'm following the French law because I'm in France, right? And also, I'm not selling anything. So there is no contract between me and the user, right? You're downloading something from France when you download VLC. You follow the law of France. So I usually answer in French, and then I usually answer that, please show me actual stuff. Also, a lot of patent stuff are just bullshit. Usually, when you see the litigation, they speak about like 4 patents. But if you start the early litigation, they arrive with a stack of 400 patents. And they check that the claim 1 or the claim 21 actually apply. And then at the end, it's like really almost nothing. So it's very useful to actually know how to read those patents and realize that, oh, no, we don't implement it like that. Oh, we don't implement it like that. So that's for patents. For copyright and DRM, it's a bit more complex. Most of the time is that you can play DVDs with VLC, but in order to play, you need to actually open a DRM. Everyone knows what DRM is? Yes, okay. So DRM is a broken by design stuff where you actually give a guy a file and you give him the key and you say, don't look at the key. No, but seriously, you need to play it, right? So in order to play it, at some point, you need to open it. Means that any DRM, you can actually open your screen, get the pins, which are basically DVI, and actually dump them, right? That is actually how, I know, like any TV show you see, they are on TV in the US. In 35 minutes, they're on the Pirate Bay. 35 minutes. How do they do it? Well, outside of the set-top box, they have a HDMI bundle that is basically copying every file to an encoder and just restreaming it. So DRM is a very stupid system, and it actually only hurts the people who are actually buying and who are actually law-abiding people. So we had a lot of discussion about the DVD DRM and the Blu-ray DRM. The DVD DRM is not a DRM. It's actually a static key on a broken cryptographic system. So far my defense is that, sorry, this is not a DRM. For Blu-rays, I don't have a solution. And then I received other letters and legal letters, but nothing was like really serious. I received other angry letters, but not legal. Other questions? Don't be shy. Yes?
What are some non-legal angry letters that you've gotten?
Death threats?
Reasons?
Because we dropped poor PC port of VLC on macOS? Someone sent Floor, like 7 years ago when it was Anthrax times, for whatever reason. Yeah, some people are insane.
What are some opportunities you've had to work with other open source projects, whether in the context of like working together with like VideoLAN or just getting to contribute to other things?
In multimedia, we work all together, even with MPV and MPlayer guys. So there is a very strong community together. The multimedia community is extremely technical and with very strong opinion people. So it's not always easy, but works fine. Outside, not so much, to be honest. It's the thing we're doing is quite different from others. We have good connections with the LibreOffice people, for example, and quite good with the KDE community. But now a lot of open source is basically B2B stuff that is basically a Python stuff for JavaScript that is running on server or something, not really on the desktop side. Questions? Yes?
It seems like you have a kind of a love-hate relationship with the breadth of the formats and codecs and everything that VLC takes care of.
No, I love it. It's fun. No, it's just like to make people to understand that. No, in fact, it's fun. It is one of the stuff where you cannot stop learning. Every time you need to learn and you need to find good solutions so that you can support all the format in the right way. So it's an actual very interesting engineering challenge and not a computer science one, which is very interesting. It's also very difficult with a very small team to ship binaries and releases to that many people with all those formats without one breaking and not the other. So no, I really love what I'm doing. Really, don't. Even with the death threats. No other questions? Sure? Don't be shy. Yes?
So you became president at 23-year-old?
25, 24, yes.
Like, how did you, like, you had so much experience, or?
Okay, so I started working on VLC, I was 22. I had absolutely 0 hours, actually that's not true, 2 hours of C programming language from school. It's not difficult and you learn. I won't lie, I worked a lot and a shit lot. And I spent hours being angry at my computer, not understanding why I couldn't compile my C++ code. But it's doable. Most of the stuff are not difficult if you have a good math background. And I became the president because I created the nonprofit and no one else wanted to do it. Because being the president of the nonprofit means that you do stuff that are not coding also. Other questions? Yes?
What's another open source effort outside of multimedia that you really respect or appreciate?
Wow, there are many open source projects I really respect. I'm absolutely amazed by the work that the KDE community is doing, for example. They have very, very limited resources compared to, for example, the GNOME Foundation, and they are doing a lot of very good stuff. I'm also very impressed with people like who do LibreOffice because text formats are very, very difficult. I might have a bit less respect or amazement by like big company open washing their efforts like Microsoft or Google.
I think we have time for one more question.
We have time for one more question. Yes?
So what are the challenges for being a leader?
Well, the challenge for the question is, what are the challenges for being a leader? Well, the problem with being a leader is that you need to actually lead and get people to follow you. The difference between a leader and a boss is that the leader brings the people with them and not forces them. And it's very difficult in a non-profit organization with people not paid and doing that on their free time. So you need to give a good vision, and that is not a bullshit vision that everyone is going to follow because they are on payroll. So that's quite difficult. But it's also mostly being like a lot of work and actually nice enough. And also learn to shut down your computer when you're angry and not don't send this very angry email where you're going to tell that everyone is an asshole. Even if you think so. And you're probably right. Okay, I think that's enough. If you have other questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you very much for coming. See you soon.
How long do you stop?
Will this be available?
It'll be on YouTube very soon. As soon as I figure out how to stop. We will put the link on Slack and on Facebook.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. But sure. Move this chair out of the way.